Hi, we have had a very interesting discussion of Doll's House in the previous class. Remember how Doll's House set not just the stage on fire, it set the entire Europe on fire at one point of time, right? Of course, when you have read the play, when you read the play, you would definitely understand the reasons behind its controversial nature, the reasons behind scandals that surrounded the play and all that, and how the writer refused to even budge an inch. In fact, there was so much of pressure on him to change the ending, and when especially during its premiering in Germany, due to the pressure from society and actors, when they were about to change the ending, they were about to change the ending to, Nora doesn't slam the door, she goes towards, the door, but stops right at the room where her children stay, indicating that probably she changes her mind, something like that. So the writer was furious and he almost said, it looks like garbage now, something like that. That's why, when he didn't budge an inch, that's when, the society was absolutely furious with him. And we heard, right, where societies, when they sent out an invitation, they didn't want anything to do with even a discussion, a critical discussion of a Doll's House. We discussed all that. Let's continue our discussion of a Doll's House now, having understood the various plot turns and the storyline of a Doll's House in the last class. Let's try to critically engage with it, and because it's a Doll's House, we can call it a dismantling of a Doll's House. Well, you and I will not be actually dismantling because the house was already in shambles, remember, because if it were a solid structure, it wouldn't have broken so easily, That's why please remember, even behind the placid surface, there might be several volcanoes about to be burst open. So just looking at the surface, we can't say that everything is placid, quiet and calm. We don't know what lies hidden, what lies dormant beneath, right? So even in Doll's House, probably the conflict was brewing. We family members couldn't see that it was in the coming, but finally when it came, it was a devastating shock for everybody, right? So let's try to engage with this remarkable critical text that the West so much admires, and many later literary historians call it as a dawning of a new era, and feminists almost hold this text on their head and celebrate it as something that has opened a new door for them, something like this. Let's see, why is this particular play so important for society. Before that, a couple of critical concerns. Well, what we are going to do now, of course, we are going to engage with the text and see some of the engage with its critical concerns, and we are also going to discuss why it inaugurated or ushered in a new or a fresh lease on life for drama itself. Because remember, until Ibsen's drama, European drama was still under the shadow of Greek drama, all that. So now Ibsen inaugurates a new chapter there. So it's called, it comes to be called realist drama. So what are the features of realist drama, and why you can call a Doll's House an exemplified version of realist drama? We can discuss that. We can also discuss on the concept of marriage, because marriage is considered a holy institution in India even now. Of course, in 19th century Victorian England, considered marriage as a sacred institute, and motherhood as again a noble thing. So because this play critically throws light on both those concepts, let's see what the play has got to say. And of course, we can also try to understand it in terms of its dramatic structure, and maybe we can take you through some of the significant dialogues, what the character says in this particular play. Okay, yeah. First things first, why is it that A Doll's House is considered as a feminist play? Please remember, Ibsen did not want to, he took exceptions to the fact that his play was being called a feminist play, because he said mine is basically a humanist play. I do not want this play to be branded and brandied as a feminist play. Nevertheless, of course, feminist thought that this play championed the cause of women in such an extraordinary way. Therefore, you find umpteen number of books, research articles that discuss A Doll's House as predominantly a feminist play. So, in order to understand that, we need to take a quick look at an important conversation that takes place between Nora and her husband Torvald. Let us see what Nora says. So, this is the dialogue. Hammer, but this is disgraceful. Is this the way you neglect your most sacred duties? Well, it is towards the end. You must have already identified it. When Nora declares that she wants to walk out on marriage, she wants to walk out on family and all that, he is furious. He thought that she is saying something, but and she would ultimately stay back. But when Hammer realizes that she is intent, really serious on walking out of marriage, family and responsibilities, he tries to hold her back, by invoking a filial duty in her. He says, you can't walk out on the marriage, you can't walk out on children, because you have a sacred duty. And Nora asks him, what do you consider is my most sacred duty? She is not she is not angry. Remember, the punch that you find in her dialogue is not from her anger. On the other hand, it is from her realized calmer self. Therefore, she asks as calmly as she could, what is my most sacred duty? What do you think is my duty? Well, do I have to tell you that? Isn't it your duty to your husband and your children? Well, don't you owe anything to us? Isn't it your duty to take care of your husband? And isn't it your sacred duty to take care of your children? Who will take care of them? Should I even mention that to you? And again, very calmly, Nora replies, I have another duty, just as sacred. She doesn't dismiss her role as a wife, her role as mother, but she realizes that, maybe they may be sacred duties, she doesn't know that. Maybe if society says they are sacred duties, they may be so. While not discounting that, she says, I have an equally sacred duty. What is it? You can't have. What duty do you mean? What is more sacred than taking care of your family? And very calmly again, Nora replies, my duty to myself. My duty to myself. Now, remember, again, you have to look at the background. This is the birth of individualism. This is the birth of individualism. In fact, today we say the West champions the cause of individualism, right? Probably you find seeds of individualism in this there, because when you are born, the first sacred duty is towards yourself. Of course, we are not trying to ask you to be selfish. The purpose of the play is to awaken what is called a self-worth, a duty towards oneself, a duty towards oneself. So, probably she considers it a higher calling. Well, it is debatable. That is why I said these things are still debatable. Though the play was written more than 100 years ago, more than 120 years ago, right? The questions that the play raises on stage as well as within its textual production, they are still relevant and they still divide society. The entire society is divided in its answers, almost equally divided, right? You do not know whether much of our society might even side with Hammer, and again some part of our society might as well side with Nora. So, these are debatable questions. Of course, the purpose of all our classes is not to solve the debate for you and give you a final answer. In fact, do not believe any classes who tell you that they have the final answers. In fact, you should not believe anybody who tells you that they will give you a final answer for all these existential questions. if there is one person who is qualified to give you final answers, that's yourself. Your own experience should tell you that. Okay? So, you will have every reason to distrust any guy who says he will give you all the answers for all the existential questions. So, you can raise these questions later. This is something Now, let us see what are the feministic concerns in the play. Of course, please recall our second week probably, right, where we discussed various approaches to decoding a text, and one of them was feministic approaches, feminist literary criticism, and why that is relevant today, even to this day. We discussed it in a very clear and concise manner. So, let us quickly recall some of the critical concerns of feminism. What are the duties of woman, or when you say a wife, a daughter, a mother, these are various roles that a woman performs in her life. What do you think of the duties? A very important question. And who defines these duties? You call them duties of women. I mean, Torvald says you have a duty towards your husband, you have a duty towards your children. Who defines those duties? Right? Who prescribes these roles for women? Has she done it for herself, or does patriarchy do that? Just because they are rules followed by majority, should women abide by them and follow them blindly at her own expense, just because it is dictated by patriarchal society? Or are these rules and duties more important to a woman than her own self-respect? Because what would a man do? If he were in such a kind of a situation, what would a man do? Right? So, the questions that feminists ask in general about society are the same set of questions that Nora asks. May not be in the same words, but the spirit of her question towards the end, of course, is very clear. And again, she seems to give some kind of an answer in again the play. That's very, very important. Again, this is towards the end, in the final act. She says it's more like a soliloquy, though it is not technically a soliloquy because she is responding to Hemmer, but she is speaking more to herself than to Hemmer, right, her husband, Torvald. So, she says, I believe that before anything else, I am a human being, just as much as you are, or at any rate, I shall try to become one. Because by then she has even lost respect for Torvald. Until that point of time, well, she could have even understood and even appreciated Torvald had his concern been even moralistic, because she always believed that Torvald would get, she knew Torvald her husband would be unhappy with her because of his own moral standards, not because it would put him in jeopardy. Well, if a person thinks that it would put him in jeopardy, that means he is not bothered about morality, the issues, broader issues of morality as such. All that he is interested in is saving his own skin, when all that Nora did as forgery was to save the life of Torvald. Because when Torvald was sick, doctors advised him some kind of vacation, a kind of health rest in Italy, and they didn't have enough money. And she couldn't have asked her father because he was on his dying bed, on his deathbed, right? And the only option she had was to borrow money at any cost. And when she had to give some kind of surety, she just forged her father's signature. Why did she do all that? She took all that risk to save her husband, because she loved her husband to that extent. And now this guy, rather than appreciating her for all the sacrifice she did, all that he is interested in is that he wants to save his skin. Forget the morals. In fact, he says later towards the end, thank God Krogstad is no more interested in pursuing the case against me. I am saved. We don't need to bother about it. It's all right. What you did is all right. Now let's get back and live the life that we used to live. That's when she realizes that her husband is not the husband that she thought she knew. He is a morally depraved guy, a selfish guy who is interested only in saving his skin. right. That is why she says, you know, I do not know whether you are a human being or not, but at least I want to be one. I know quite well that most people would agree with you, because society is with them, right, because the entire society is patriarchal society, and that you have warrant for it in books. Maybe your books also prescribe that, your shastras might prescribe that, your own rules might prescribe that, because you know, at the end of the day, all of these, you know, whether it is your law book, whether it is your institution such as, you know, police or court or anything, or whether it is society, these are all patriarchal constructs, right. All of them are patriarchal constructs. Therefore, she says it might even be there in your books, but I can't be satisfied any longer with what most people say and with what is in the books. Well, I am not happy with what the book says, what your institutions say, what your friends say. I must think things out for myself and try to understand them. I am more so this is the path. That is why I said, you know, from the illusion that marriage would provide her security, from the illusion that home is a safe place for her, a new illumination dawns in her that probably it is not all that secure, it is not all that noble, right. Therefore, she walks out of the door. So, this is the kind of, you know, this is how she reasons with herself. These are some things that we can you know, keep in mind. Of course, you know, remember when the play was written, it was still a Victorian society and industrialization had not yet set in, and the background was still conservative. So, the play was you know, I mean it is like you know, setting the bull in the china shop, as they say. You know, it was quite destructive, but not in a negative sense. Remember, not in a negative sense, because if she tries, I mean, if she exposes hypocrisy in marriage, it is not her fault. If there was no hypocrisy in marriage to expose, well, the family would not have shattered, right. So, if her husband was not so selfish, you know, when all that he had to do was sympathize with her, you know, well, I understand why you did that, but at least in future please consult me, I might have a different say, something like that. He could have consoled her. On the other hand, all that he was interested in was saving his skin, right. So, these were a couple of things that have to be kept in mind. So, one of the critics you know, later goes on to remark that when a woman was denied the right to establish her dignity and identity in society, well, she is absolutely right in walking out of such kind of institutions, right. And another remarkable critic, you know, says that when Nora slammed the door shut in on, I mean, when she slams the door shut on her marriage, walls shook in 1,000 homes. Why 1,000 homes? You can even call it 1,000,000 homes, right, because she has set the path ablaze, you know, so that women who are on the path of self discovery can walk, remember. And again, as we said in the previous class, she may have closed the door on her husband and children, and interestingly, that opened the way to the turn of the century women's movement, you know, that gave birth to women, feminist you know, women's movement, feminism and all that, and it inspired extraordinary writers such as you know, Kate Chopin, Virginia Woolf. They have their you know, they offer their debt of gratitude to Ibsen and especially you know, A Doll's House. Later in the 1960s, commenting on this particular play, Michael Mayer, he is a biographer of Henrik Ibsen, a well known biographer. He says that no play had ever been contributed so momentously to the social debate or been so widely and furiously discussed among people who are not normally interested in theatre or even in any artistic production. So, if there is one play that you know, that made the society sit up and discuss, this was A Doll's House, and even to this day when you read, probably it might even shock you even to this day, because to that extent our society is steeped in values of patriarchy, and you and I may not even understand, you know, why Nora had to walk out of that institution even to this day, remember, right. So that's why I mean, I also said, right, how even a discussion of that play was banned even in social gatherings. So this shows the extent to which society was almost, it was scared of this play, for all right reasons. Now, as I said, Nora's character is one of the most strong characters that you can think of in Western literature or even in Eastern literature for that matter, one of the strongest characters that you can come across. Well, as I said, Ibsen was not happy with this labeling because he believed that Nora's quest is not a woman's quest alone, it is a quest of any individual who is deprived of dignity and truth and things like that. However, because of its strong echoes of women's concerns, even to this day, it's called a major feminist text, something like this. These are some concerns that can be kept in mind while discussing the play. See if you agree with these or not. And the second question is that I said the play inaugurates, a new school of drama called realism, realistic drama. Of course, again, no writer writes a play in order to inaugurate a particular school of drama. When he or she writes, or when a writer writes, all that they intend is to create a beautiful piece of writing, but it's to the credit of Ibsen and A Doll's House that a new school of drama or a new type of drama was inaugurated. Let's see what exactly this realism is and why Doll's House is called realistic drama. Okay. Now, what exactly is this realism, and what is this modern drama, and what is its preoccupation with realism as such? Now, remember, we identified again in our historical understanding of the evolution of drama, we said that until the late 19th century and the beginning of 20th century, the play, especially drama, was still under the influence, heavy influence of Greek drama, Roman drama and all that. So, this drama for the first time, what is realism? See, realism is again a movement in literature, especially fiction, and it is also a movement in drama wherein first time you break away from the stereotype of a protagonist. Until that point of a time, when you meant protagonist, all that you mean is a person of noble birth, high birth, aristocratic background and all that. See, in our life, each of us is a protagonist in our life, right? Who is a protagonist in your life? You are the protagonist, right? Therefore, you and I, we may not have an aristocratic background, but that does not prevent us from adding dignity to our own life. Therefore, for the first time, you gain, a commoner gains an entry into the portal of literature and becomes protagonist. So, his drama inaugurates it. Nora is not an extraordinary character in the sense that she is not any royalty, she is not a princess, she is not a queen, she is not anybody, She is a regular household guy like you and me, right, like we are. She too is a regular guy. So, look at how, look how dignified she is in her treatment of her own self and in her sacrifices towards society, and how that is not reciprocated by society and her family and all that. So, these are some things that can be kept in mind. And again, what are some conventions of this realistic drama? Of course, like you have protagonists of common background. It is also characterized by concise plotting, a very important and a compelling binding narrative, and a standardized structure with little importance on emphasis on characterization and intellectual ideas. So, these are some things that can be kept in mind. Okay. So, this is about Henrik Ibsen, realism, and of course, A Doll's House inaugurating realistic drama. Okay. So, from here, let us try to analyze A Doll's House and the layers of meaning, symbols here. Again, a doll here obviously refers to Nora because she is treated like one, like Nora herself says in one of her dialogues to her husband, "You treat me like a doll. Earlier my father used to treat me like a doll. now you treat me like a doll, like I treat my children like a doll. In fact, she is also aware of that. She is also aware of that, So, like I play, whenever I am, I feel bored, like I go and play with my 3 kids, you come and play with me. My father used to come and play with me. You consider me as an immature one, the entire play, it's a doll. And house, now look at this. House is what is a house? House is a place of comfort, a place of security, and how that place of comfort and place of security is subverted, because a doll's house is, again, because of course though doll and house are 2 separate components, together a doll's house has no meaning, right? A doll's house, if it's only a house of a doll, it's it's not of essence. Well, it's just for a show, right? It's just for a show, and so is the case with Torvald. When he learns that Nora wants to walk out on marriage, he insists, see, fine, I am going to leave you as it is, but at least for the sake of appearances, let's retain our marriage. So finally, what he is interested in, he is interested not in retaining Nora as his wife or as part of his family. He does not want society to think bad of him, because if Nora has walked away from him, society might think that he has some kind of a lacuna in him, right? That's why he says, at least for the sake of appearances, at least to maintain our social contract obligation as husband and wife, let's stay together under the same house. I will not even trouble you in any way, but don't walk out of it. That's his logic. And it infuriates Nora all the more. It's not out of love for her, but out of love for himself, out of love for his own self image, that he wants Nora to be there, a part of the family. So you can think of all that. It's like a house of cards which can scramble any time, which can fall any time. So the moment Nora realizes that, she thinks that this house has no significance, therefore she has every reason to slam a door behind such kind of a house. So these are some things that you can think of. Okay, and of course here is a remarkable dialogue that we just discussed. I was Papa's doll child, and after marriage I am your doll, and so therefore I want to end it. I don't want to play any more games with it. Our marriage has just been a game. It's just been for appearances. Now I want to discover those places, those institutes that are worth exploring. Therefore, my first journey is towards discovering my own self. Saying that, she walks out of it. And when it comes to dramatic structure, of course, we have already identified a dramatic structure. It follows, it's an act in 3 plays, and very dutifully it follows Freytag's exposition. In the first act, we are introduced to all the characters, and simmering tension begins building towards the end of the first act. It raises towards the second act, and almost by the beginning of the third act, there is a climax, and of course in the middle of the third act there is a falling action, and the play ends. There is a resolution to the conflict when Nora walks out of it. So you can call it a perfect play that follows dramatic Freytag's pyramid. And some of the important things the play discusses is how there is a collapse of the parental ideal, and of course it also critiques Victorian values, the undue importance given to marriage, institutions and roles such as parenting and all that. And it exposes hypocrisy of the patriarchy. More than that, it also explores a platonic love between Dr. Rank and Nora. These are some various other dimensions the play also explores. So these things, some things that you can keep in mind while you are discussing the play. Okay, before we wrap it up, let's take a quick look at what some major critics have got to say about the play and why they consider it as a very important one. We have already discussed Michael Mayer, who is the biographer of Ibsen. Let's take a look at Kate Millett. We discussed Kate Millett's sexual politics during our class on feminism. Please recall that. And she says that Nora confronted every convention and the chivalrous masculine prejudice that caged her within a child's toy structure, hoping to ensure that she would remain a house pet and infant there forever. And later she goes on to even say that, marriage as an institute always treats women as house pet, and of course they were, a husband as a part of an institutional structure would expect his wife to be docile, submissive and infant forever, so that he becomes the father figure and all that. You have August Strindberg, again another very well known playwright, and maybe immediately after watching the play in 80s he seemed to have remarked, marriage was revealed as being far from divine institution for the first time. Of course, we have heard the statement, right, marriages are made in heaven. This play exposes the follies and foibles of the institution of marriage, and exposes the deceit that's inherent in it. Because why is it deceit? Because marriage as an institution more often than not only protects the interests of the man there, therefore rightfully the play exposes all of them, something like this. And John Templeton, commenting on a doll's house, he says that Nora is not just a strong woman who argues for female liberation, she is definitely much more than that. So she embodies elements of tragedy, she embodies elements of comedy, she is a perfect combination of tragicomedy, and things like that, and he extols how strong a character that is. So these are some important things that we can keep in mind while discussing A Doll's House. I hope you enjoyed all these things. We have very many other critics. This is just some snapshot of how the play has captured the critical attention of some fellow writers, some fellow playwrights, and journalists, biographers, and things like that. You can read the play and explore more of it for yourself. All right. Next class we come up with something more interesting. Until then, bye bye. Take care. So far we have discussed the European drama and Western drama, and maybe I think it's time for us to explore Indian drama too. All right. So gear up. Maybe in the coming classes or in the subsequent class we'll discuss Indian drama. Okay. Thank you.